There are moments in life when the universe seems to align, when fate itself whispers in the quiet of the night, pushing two souls together, whether they are ready or not. It was one of those moments when they met, a chance encounter, seemingly insignificant. But something in the air shifted. It felt as if the stars themselves had conspired for this meeting. What was once a fleeting moment became the beginning of something extraordinary, something that would change everything. Their eyes met, and in that single gaze, something deep stirred within them. Words were unnecessary, for the silence between them spoke louder than anything they could have said. In that moment, time slowed down, and the world outside faded away. It didn't matter that life was moving on around them. When they were together, nothing else seemed to matter. They were just two souls, effortlessly connecting in a way that was impossible to explain, yet undeniable in its power. It wasn't just attraction. It was deeper. It was something unshakable, something that could weather any storm, any challenge. But love, real love, is never as simple as it seems. Life has a way of testing even the strongest bonds, of throwing obstacles in the path of those who dare to truly love. And so, distance entered their lives. A cold, unwelcome reality that neither of them had been prepared for. They stood on opposite sides of this wall, helpless to break it down, but determined to overcome it no matter what. Promises were whispered in the dark. Vows were made to wait, to love, to never let go. But time, as it always does, began to stretch the bond between them thin. Letters turned into messages, messages into brief phone calls, and then, eventually, silence. It wasn't that their love had faded, but the weight of reality had settled in. The distance became too much to bear. They longed to hold each other, to be near, but all they could do was reach for shadows. And then, one day, a message arrived, simple yet heavy with meaning. "Do you still believe in us?" There was a pause before the reply came, a pause filled with years of longing, of waiting. "I always have," was the answer. And in that moment, fate, ever unpredictable, brought them back together. This time, there would be no distance, no walls, no excuses, no more waiting. They were reunited, and when their hands intertwined again, it was as if no time had passed at all, as if they had never been apart. The love that had once been tested by time, by space, by life itself, had survived. No matter how many storms had tried to tear them apart, they always found their way back to each other. And in the end, they knew this love was no fleeting affair, no temporary passion. It was something deeper, something forever. It was written into the very fabric of their souls, bound together by a force greater than anything they had ever known. Their reunion felt like a dream, one neither of them ever wanted to wake up from. The air between them was thick with unspoken words, with years of separation pressing down on them. But when their fingers intertwined again, all of that pain, all of that longing faded away. In its place was something softer, something warmer, like home. They didn't need words at first. Their eyes spoke in a language that only they could understand. Years apart had done nothing to silence the connection between them. They had walked through storms, fought battles against fate. Yet here they were, standing together once more. It was proof that some loves, no matter how far apart they drift, will always find their way back to each other. Days passed in a blur, and time seemed to lose its meaning. They spent their days wrapped up in each other, rediscovering the beauty of being together. There were stolen kisses, whispered confessions, and laughter filling the spaces where sadness once lived. It wasn't just a reunion. It was a reckoning, a moment of realization that no matter what had happened in the past, they were stronger now. They had learned to fight for each other, to hold on even when everything around them was falling apart. But love, even the strongest love, is never without its fears. As they held each other close, there was an undercurrent of doubt. Could they make it this time? Could they withstand the weight of the past? Could they fight through the uncertainties that always seemed to follow them? But true love does not thrive on fear. It grows in trust. In the quiet certainty of knowing that no matter what happens, two souls who are meant to be together will always find their way back. And so, they silenced their doubts the only way they knew how, by loving each other with everything they had. Morning became a sacred moment, a blessing to wake up beside each other, to feel warmth instead of loneliness. There were slow kisses, hands tracing paths over skin, as if memorizing every detail, every touch. They whispered promises that had once been too hard to say, and with each word they built something stronger. This time, they wouldn't let the world steal what was theirs. But life, as always, had other plans. No matter how tightly they held on to each other, the past wasn't so easily forgotten. The scars of separation lingered, even in their happiest moments. Would history repeat itself? What if one of them had to leave again? The questions hung in the air, unspoken but heavy. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, one of them finally broke the silence. "Are we strong enough?" they asked, their voice barely more than a whisper. The answer came without hesitation. "We always have been." And so, they chose to believe. Not in fate, not in luck, but in the love they had fought so hard to keep. Because they knew, deep down, that some loves are meant to last. Some loves are written into the stars, bound together beyond the limits of time. And no matter what happened next, they knew one thing for certain. Their love would endure. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Their love settled into something deeper, something unshakable. It was no longer about longing, about passion. It was about understanding, about choosing each other every single day. The beauty of it lay in its simplicity, the way their hands always found each other in a crowded room, the way silence between them was never empty, but filled with warmth. They could just exist together, and still, they felt whole. But life, never kind enough to let happiness go untested, had one more challenge for them. A storm loomed on the horizon. Responsibilities, expectations, and the weight of the world creeping into their perfect little universe. Decisions had to be made, hard ones they neither wanted to face. One evening, under a sky that seemed too vast to care about their pain, they sat together in silence. The air between them felt different, heavier. "I don't want to lose you again," one of them whispered, their voice barely audible. "You won't," the other promised. But there was hesitation in their voice, a hesitation that had nothing to do with love and everything to do with reality. Love alone had never been enough to keep them together before. What made this time different? But they had already come too far, fought too hard. They had already lost too much. So they did what they had always done. They held on to each other, even as the world tried to pull them apart. Love, they knew, was not just about perfect moments. It was about fighting through the storms, about choosing to stay even when leaving felt easier. They would choose each other, again and again, no matter what came next. The days that followed were filled with uncertainty, but their love remained steadfast. They had been here before, standing at the edge of something that threatened to break them. But this time, they refused to let go. Still, the world had a way of testing even the strongest hearts. The responsibilities pulling them in different directions weren't just whispers in the background anymore. They had become voices demanding to be heard. One night, beneath the quiet glow of the city lights, they stood together, knowing that a decision had to be made. "Tell me we can make it through this," one of them pleaded, voice raw with emotion. The other didn't answer right away. Not because there was doubt, but because they knew that love alone wasn't always enough. Love was a choice. Love was effort. Love was sacrifice. And that was what made it terrifying. Finally, after a silence that stretched too long, they spoke. "We've already lost each other once. I won't let it happen again." It was a promise, a vow stronger than anything written in any book or spoken in any church. And so, they did what they always did. They held on to each other, even as the world threatened to pull them apart. Then, as all moments of fate tend to do, everything changed in an instant. An opportunity arose, one that could change the course of their lives forever. But it came with a price: separation, Distance. The very thing that had once torn them apart. Do we fight it, or do we let it happen again? This time, they weren't just asking about the future. They were asking about everything. About fate, about choices, about whether love could truly withstand everything the world threw at it. There was no easy answer. But as they looked at each other, hearts pounding with the weight of what was to come, they knew one thing for certain. Forever wasn't about never facing hardship. Forever was about choosing to hold on, no matter what tried to pull them apart. It was a love that had been written in the stars long before their eyes ever met. That first moment, that simple brush of fate, seemed insignificant to the world, but to them, it was everything. It was a spark that lit a flame that refused to burn out, no matter the distance, no matter the years that tried to break them apart.